going to the restroom. The gym's right there. He was walking into the gym to work out,
Accidentally
and I was like,
bump.
wow, the
Yeah,
mental and the
hopefully
physical
you can
there.
draw it.
As Wesley So even mentioned
take
as well
over
too. He was
you.
like, yeah, he's just a little bit more fit at the top level, and you can see that. He then went out to the Leafs game to see some other guys do the thing. Magnus is ready to
Between
go.
rounds,
All
give me
levels.
1 second.
Magnus also has said frequently that he thinks Fabiano Caruana is the clear number 2 in the world, and he might feel like he already got the job done. And Wesley is sort of the next in line. He might feel like it's a little bit of a weight off his shoulders. We see the head-to-head. They have played so many freaking games against each other.
Yeah.
31-17 is wild. I mean, it's
39 draws is wild.
Well, 39 draws is wild. Yeah, but of course they played. Let's quick math. 87 games of Rapid is what that was.
And remember, fans, that stat was just Rapid.
Yeah,
It's just Rapid. It's not classical.
It's not classical.
Not Blitz,
It's
yeah.
played so many times. And a better stat is what is Wesley's win percentage in all 3 types of formats? That was 31-17. So that's like a good basketball team. It's like a third place basketball team right there. Wesley's beaten him 17 times, and this year he's beaten him a couple of times as well. So we'll see which Wesley shows up.
Magnus is doing Magnus things. We'll see which Wesley shows up to battle Magnus. Let's remind everybody of all those Magnus things that he has done here through the first 6 days in Toronto. A 7-3 record overall in his white and black games there. Misread that one, but I want to jump to the brilliancies, by the way. He's played 8 of them. Wow, that's tied for most with Wesley So. That's a fun little stat right there. A 5-1 Armageddon overall record. Kenny, biggest stat that jumps out to you on the Magnus scoreboard?
That 5-1. That 5-1 overall is the biggest for me. I mean, obviously the 8 brilliancies is nasty too, but that 5-1. And guess who gave him that one?
All your fault.
That's right, it was Wesley. The question is always, can you stop Magnus? Wesley has done it already once
Correct.
today, but now more games in the match.
Yep. We heard Hikaru on his way out say that if Magnus gets more games, it's obviously more of an opportunity for him to make a comeback if he goes down in a match or if the match is tied. We saw it against Fabiano.
He did come
But
back.
I'm going to go back to the fact that match was a barn burner. 2 times it went to Armageddon versus Fabiano, and Magnus still managed to overcome. And Wesley roaring back against Nodzerbek. I mean, it's pretty clear both of these guys deserve to be here. So now we're just going to have to see who the champ is.
The champ is here.
These guys do deserve to be here. We're happy you're in here with us. Another person who's in here with us right now is Kaya. She's been patiently waiting for a chance to jump in. So Kaya, good morning.
Hey, Kaya.
Morning, Kaya.
Good morning, Danny. Yeah, it's patiently is the word. I mean, these chairs are so comfortable. You can fall asleep here. I don't know how the players sit here for such a long time, just so energetic, and that's what it's all about today. You know, we started out back in January with hundreds of players in the first qualification. We took the top 8 players here to Toronto. They have been fighting it out now since Saturday. We are now left with 2 chairs, 2 players to fight it out for the ultimate title. And, well, Magnus Carlsen, he is now known as the GOAT after traveling around for chess for many years now and asking the question, who is the best chess player of all time? So many times I heard people answer, Garry Kasparov. But more often now, over the last few years, people start answering Magnus Carlsen. And let's hear what the other players here in Toronto said about Magnus Carlsen before the tournament started. So first of all, what is your take on Magnus Carlsen?
Growing up, he was my idol because when I started playing chess, he became world champion 2013. It's always pretty cool. I play against him, and I'm happy that I managed to be quickly in the top so I could compete against him. So he's really exceptional player and an amazing champion.
I mean, it is the best player by far, I would say. I don't think he's as motivated in chess as he once used to be.
Magnus Carlsen is, of course, he's incredibly strong. It's very hard to play against him.
Well, Magnus Carlsen could definitely be considered the greatest player of all time, or at least in a close battle with Garry Kasparov.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to play against him, see his form. Hopefully, the Silvas can put up a good fight and maybe beat him.
The difference between me and Magnus was like 300 tour points, so it means a lot.
So I think that speaks for itself, as people like to say.
He's admired by his peers. He's feared by his peers. They look at his chess and they look at what he does. They're always impressed. Magnus Carlsen, larger than life in many ways, larger than chess. And speaking of larger than just the chess in here, we now have a fan zone that we got to check in with. And Chess Bros are going to be holding it down live at a bar not too far from here. There are already fans in there. We see a few of them. I think there's
first logged up.
there's a lot of
and I had
fans in
second
there.
logged up.
We're seeing through. Ooh, somebody's filming right there. Eric and Amon are going to be hosting. If you're looking for a different flavor of commentary, you can head over to the Chess Broad channel as they will have the call with a lot of fans who will probably have a great and a safe time. Is that Arion Tari right there?
That is.
That's Arion Tari right there.
Fix your internet.
This is Norwegian Grandmaster, but all right, those are the fans who are here to cheer for Magnus. Well, guess what? Last night, Magnus Carlsen was a fan as he went to the Leafs game, and he was cheering for a score that it didn't look like they were having a great time. I mean, just look at that. They were down 5-0. I'm sure they were having fun anyway, but Levy, tell the fans if they missed it. What happened in that one?
Yeah, that's all I saw. I did not actually see the update until this morning. I thought this was hilarious. You know, you take Magnus Carlsen to a Sweden hockey game, and the home team's down 5-0. Well, the Toronto Maple Leafs scored 5 goals in the third period, which sources have told us has never been done before. But there's going to be hockey fans in the chat that might disagree, or we are just totally wrong. The Toronto Maple Leafs scored 5 goals in the third period to tie the score, and then lose in overtime. Perfect strategy for a Toronto hockey team.
Perfect strategy. They lose in overtime. You do get points for going for overtime, but all right, we're overtime right now on Magnus. It's time for us to move across to Wesley. So, and you're the guy who gives him the nickname, who just you've seen him do it now 2 years in a row. Your thoughts?
Well, 100%. I mean, last year when he did win, the CGC, I mean, the big money prize there, all the players he had to go through, and it was very, very strong field. I mean, you see him here in Toronto, he feels so good. You can tell he's in great spirits, and he does.
I got D locked up.
Elo that carries over from last year, just because of what he did last year in Toronto. He already took out Magnus too as well. I mean, he's trying to do it again.
Yep. And here's how
what the fuck?
He did it and come back over Notre Dame abuse.
Simon's all mine, guys.
But he showed up on Thursday. Not 1, but 2, 3, really, if you consider the Armageddon matches. And Levy, back to you. Your thoughts on Wesley So and whether that chess has a chance to continue now that he's facing Carlsen.
Listen, Toronto has been his city. Last year, he knocks out Hikaru, and then he wins the entire thing. This time, he's the top seed. He chooses Nordjybek of the
All right, I retire.
He makes it as dramatic as possible, so we get more viewership. He wins the Armageddon after an 8-match day.
Crazy.
He picked his opponent, and he sent Magnus the hardest opponent he could possibly find. Magnus overcame the challenge, so now Wesley's going to have to take down Magnus. That epic stuff.
I love the call there, because as a guy who's been accused of scripting a few things in the chess world, I will say that if you were to script some content in terms of how Magnus Carlsen falls behind against Fabiano Caruana, not once but twice, epic comeback in Armageddon. I guess Fabi sent the second one Armageddon, and then Wesley So finds a way to give us the most possible chess he could. The round robin where they flew down, speaking of giving all that he could to chess, was a big match, because Wesley So, after losing an Armageddon big, quote-unquote losing, Magnus won black, Wesley blew him off the board.
Yeah, he sacrificed a knight, a pawn, a rook, right?
You didn't scream it.
No, I didn't scream it. I'm trying to save my voice for the screams a little bit later. Incredible. His 6 days in Toronto, we have that up on the screen. I mean, he's
Catch
tied
up
up in these
easy
minutes.
too, watch.
That's really all we got to look at. They should have just put that bullet point up on the screen. And he's the only one to defeat Magnus in a match here in Toronto.
This looks exactly the same. I mean, I was looking, I was like, did they change it? Production? No.
He's not done.
It's the same as Magnus. I mean, it's crazy. They're the same person in a different universe. Spider-Man me.
I mean, Candy, you're making a great point. The stats are just strikingly similar, right? I mean, they have both played the best chess of any two people, and I guess that's why they're still here standing. And still here with us inside the playing hall is Kaya. She's been waiting again to weigh in on So. Kaya, what you got for us?
Yeah,
You're a fucking bitch for that, too.
The secret lab chair, and I'm sitting by one of the boards. So we started out obviously with 4 tables, 4 boards. Today there will only be play on 1 board. This is not the board. So that means I'm allowed to touch the pieces. I'm not going to screw up any DGT stuff here. And it's going to be interesting, right, to see when the players come. They always organize their pieces the way they want it. Shadub, Magnus Carlsen always puts his knights like this. Wesley So, however, he likes to have them facing towards the heart. Both knights facing like this. So this is what Wesley will do when he comes to the board today to play the first game with the white pieces. He is the top seed, remember. So I want to ask you guys, what do you think will be the first move in the big final when Wesley So has the white pieces in game 1?
It's hard to guess.
I jumped too early.
But I'm going to guess that he doesn't play 1e4. He struggles with 1e4. against Nottingham to throw off a couple of his losses came with that, and he told me hanging out in the lounge that he was not too happy with the opening there. So will he play 1v3? I guess I'll guess that for funsies. But I don't think we're going to see E4.
Wow, that's a good observation. I actually thought he would play E4 because based off the interview that you gave with him, and he was like, yeah, favorite opening. He said E4. I was like, oh, cool, E4. So feels like that, but you have a great point. He just didn't do well with E4 once he just tried.
Yeah, I'm going to predict that E4, you don't know if Magnus will play E5 or C5. And E5 is symmetrical, it's going to be a Spanish or an Italian, and he'll ease into the match. Or Magnus could just show up guns blazing with a Sicilian. Right. And I kind of feel like Wesley might want to ease into it and play a D4, because that kind of controls the action. We're going to get a traditional Queen's Pawn and D and C pawns, but I mean, he might show up and do whatever he wants. So, but my guess is D4.
I like that take, though. If he doesn't want to fight in game one, maybe avoid
everybody, you can jump other than the lightning.
Now, I'm just going to say what I'm hoping for, and that is exact same as you, Danny. I'm hoping for the B3. I love that opening. So much fun. And Wesley he's here, ready to fight. This means so much to Wesley So to be able to fight for it and maybe have a chance to win the Champions Chess Tour 2023. We did sit down with him before the tournament to talk about what's at stake here.
I like it.
We are here in Toronto. I am excited for the CCP finals here with Wesley So. Nice to be in Toronto.
Yes, good. I'm also very excited.
Oh my God,
after such a long time.
Fucking dream show.
You made it here to Toronto. So, what makes you excited?
I did very well last year. Hopefully, it's a good sign. And it's the same place, and it's one of my most favorite hotels from last year. So, hopefully, that's a good sign.
What are the fans in for this week?
You know, things are going to happen very quickly. Right from the very beginning, there's a lot in stake here. So, players are going to be very competitive.
And obviously, sometime will you learn that the finals would be over the board. What was your reaction to that?
But we're playing in a computer, right?
No, we're playing open board.
Oh, we're playing in a real board.
Yeah. Oh, so you're learning that now?
Yeah, I was quite confused. I don't know what Magnus has been doing, playing online all this time. Then. Well, okay, so thank you.
Can you describe your playing style?
When I was younger, I would always play 1v4 and play the Sicilian black. Like, I was pretty aggressive. I'd go for mating attacks, but I could not play the endgame. And then when I turned 16, I started reading a lot of opening books. And then when I reached 2600, I realized that you cannot just go for the attack every single game and hope to win, because 2600s are not stupid. They will bring you down.
And what would it mean to win it?
It would be amazing. My last tournament of the year, it's really a big deal. This year is much stronger than last year. You got Magnus, you got Sati, you got so there's a lot in stake.
Wesley So, thank you, and good luck in the CCP finals.
We know how much he would want to win, and here are the odds for him to win. Chess.com stats.
He's got quite the lead,
a long and lengthy kind of probability
Simon
simulation. I'm not going to tell you how we arrived at this, but I think most people tend to agree with it. Magnus 50% favor coming in, Wesley 7. Now it's a 25% chance of winning 75%. But all right, there's a chance both players are about to come in right now, and they typically like to get ready. So I think we're going to get out of here. Let's throw it across the sea.
Guess what? It goes to nothing.
Robert and David, we know you guys are waiting. You're as excited, I'm sure, as we are to see what action goes down on the board. So, Tanya, how you doing today?
Fuck it up.
I'm doing good, Danny. It's
I'm definitely taking a second now.
Everything that's coming up. We've been building up to this moment all year round. The fight for the championship, and it is between the two best performers. The top two finishers of the round robin is the world champion taking on the global champion. Clash of the Titans, however you look at it. How does Wesley defy those odds today, Robert?
Well, we've been really waiting for this clash for over a year, since Wesley So took down the 2022 Chess.com Global Championship and Magnus Carlsen won the 2022 Champions Chess Tour. So these two players, they came in as defending champions. Only one of them can escape and keep their crown. Who will it be, Wesley or Magnus? I think Magnus has to be the favorite, as I always say, but Wesley will give him all he can do.
Yeah, it feels like a unification match in some way, and it's just a tantalizing prospect. If we see anything like the chess we saw when these two met in the round-robin stage, then I'm going to get my popcorn out and just enjoy it. But yes, Magnus, I think undoubtedly, even Wesley So will admit, he starts as the favorite, but he cannot relax. One move, one slip up, and Wesley will be ready to punish him.
Carlsen. It's hard to bet against the world #1, regardless of who he's playing. And we had such a big semi-final backing. Both Magnus and Wesley put on this phenomenal fight. For Wesley, it went down to the wire. Magnus was able to wrap it up without a sentry. Do you think stamina fatigue is a factor at this point?
Well, I feel like that Magnus match in some ways was just as close as the Wesley So win over the Rebecca Buzataro, because Magnus won 2 consecutive Armageddons. It was tied 2 games apiece. Fabiano had 3 decisive games off of Magnus. Not something many people can say in this world. So both players will be exhausted. It's the 7th day of an 8-day stretch here. So I think that both players will have to give all that's left in the reserve tank.
And Wesley So did get the job done against Magnus Carlsen in the round robin.
That was a good beast. I like that.
Wesley, probably one of the best played games of the finals so far. He took the match in that one. He's got to find that same chess, that same provocative, aggressive play as he did in that one, David.
That was a memorable encounter. Wesley throwing sacrifices out there, going straight directly for Magnus's king. He needs more of the same. He cannot be too differential here. He cannot give Magnus too much respect. It's going to be a long match over today and tomorrow. But Wesley will need to take his chances. He will need to show that same level of attack, of aggression that he displayed in that one game.
That move knight to g5. What a move that was, finishing the game in the Armageddon. He's starting the attack and eventually finishing the game. Now for Wesley, it's a big question, right? It was a different format in the round robin. It was a shorter format with just 2 rapid games going into Armageddon. This is a best of 3 set. And today, set 1. Are we expecting Wesley in a best of 4 match to take a more cagey approach? Or does he, as David was saying, go for it, make the most of the opportunities from the very start?
Bananas and
From Wesley So, I go with my tried and true method. I play solidly against this man right here. World #1, Magnus Carlsen. Doesn't matter if he's out late watching hockey, he always brings in the chessboard. You see the players, they're about to get set.
We will see Wesley's opening approach in just a few seconds. Will it be the King's Pawn opening or the Queen's Pawn opening, or have I predicted? Perhaps we might see another 1v3. I'd be surprised if we see another cowboy chess here.
Yeah, Wesley So, he starts with white.
No, you get that fucked up.
Ready, set, go. We're off. And
You
it's
know
the
what?
finals
Fuck that.
Champions Chess Tour 2023. Glasses off, business time. Wesley So, he's got to choose his first move. Which pawn?
It's the title match. He does adjust Jaduk the king, and it is 1v3. Magnus Carlsen shakes his head. He was surprised. Magnus was not expecting this.
I can't tell if he's more surprised or offended. B3 is not an opening you see at the highest level of chess, at least not in this time control. You usually see it in blitz chess, but Magnus probably didn't take it so seriously, considering Wesley, he seemed to use it just to get something. Magnus has not even played his very first move.
Wow, not many people in world chess have the courage to play this type of opening against Magnus Carlsen. Usually they're trying to occupy the center, trying to force the issue. And look at Magnus, he's bemused, he's just shocked here, looking up at the ceiling, just trying to pick how to react to this shock, this surprise. And eventually he plays a bit of copycat, mirror image here. He gets ready to be in Keto. Black starts square bishop, playing g6, knight out, and will Wesley take this knight? Big stylistic choice. White is flexible, he just pushes a pawn, and we see the first mind games.
And Magnus Carlsen himself has employed 1v3 with the white side. Definitely something that, yes, Wesley won a game against Nalibek Abdusattorov in the semifinals, but nobody could have expected this seriously to happen against. We were talking about this being the anti-young player chess approach in the opening. The guy Wesley's facing right now is not exactly a young player.
Well, you could argue still be in his prime, and I can't believe that I, of all people, am about to say this. Did Magnus prepare by looking at Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it? The answer is likely no. But Wesley asked the question, what should I do? He posed that question to Fabiano Caruana, and Fabi said the key to playing Magnus, jokingly, is to prepare for and against 1v3. So we have that opening on the board. We're going to have Phoenix Kettle from both of Black's bishops on the longest diagonals. And Wesley, He was the first to surprise Magnus. Now he's the one in the think tank. There is no combative play, no tension between pieces just yet.
We're going to have a lot of fun from the start. We were discussing whether this will be a cagey start, a more solid approach, but it's clear that Wesley wants to start with energy, in a combative manner, in an unexpected opening approach here. David, what's the best strategy when you're taken by surprise early on? Perhaps Magnus was considering that B3 would be an option, but maybe not taking it that seriously. How do you approach that situation on the board?
Yeah, it feels like there's always two different paths you can take when you're surprised. One, you think, okay, I'm being surprised here. I want to kind of rise to the challenge, fight fire with fire. I'm going to punish my opponent for their temerity in playing such an opening. Or you just think, I want to survive. I want to kind of negotiate the opening, navigate that safely, just get a solid position. As long as I've weathered the initial storm, I will be able to fight on level terms a bit later.
And Robert, what do you think? Is this Magnus taking fire by fire, or just saying, you know what, you got the first surprise in, I'm playing to equalize it?
He's played some feeler moves thus far. I did see him roll up his sleeves, that he looks locked in and ready to fight for the center. From the black side, he wants to push the C-pawn up 2 squares. In fact, by playing B6 early on, not only are you welcoming a field here light square bishop, but you can fight for the center in this manner using your C-pawn to combat a D-pawn. And Magnus, he delays that choice and casts his kingside. Both players play normal moves at this stage. I would say now that the opening surprise is past us and past them, it's about who's about to come up with a plan.
Yeah, both sides are super flexible right now. Wesley can push a bunch of different pawns. Most likely the White King is going to copy and castle on the king side within the next few turns. Whether White being Catus's light square bishop as well is the first question. Wesley now mulling those questions over. If White does Fianchetto, then we'll see all 4 bishops on the longest possible diagonals, all kind of neutralizing each other. And roughly level play there. White's kind of pride and joy right now is the pawn center. White has extra space in the middle, so Wesley will be trying to figure out a way to ensure that that is maintained over the next few moves. But he's peering into the future. He's trying to work out a plan of action the next half dozen moves or so. And this is kind of a good moment to pause because we are reaching the end of the opening. The surprise is over, as Robert says, and it will soon be about those middle game plans.
While we might see copycat chess when it comes to the bishops, the center definitely is, just for now, advantage Wesley with space. But that means for Magnus, it's going to be about getting a break in the center. And once you're finished with the development, you want to strike with either the C-pawn moving forward. That would be my choice of break in these kind of setups, to eventually force Wesley to decide what he wants to do with those pawns.
It's always nice to control the center, but when somebody establishes their pawns on the 4th rank like this, you can challenge them with one simple pawn move. We're talking about the C-pawn pawn push. If Wesley ever decides to push pawn even further, that's closer to Black's plan. Easier to chisel, easier to chisel at that center. And so for Wesley, he's deciding how to continue his development here. I would be Fianchettoing, but I'm wondering if Wesley's looking at this position, saying we're on neutral ground. Both of us, out of whatever 7 minutes of preparation we could have had, it's like, I love my position because I don't know what to do next. It's actually coming up with a plan, not just individual moves.
Wesley, for a while, he had his head in hands. I was wondering whether he was napping, catching up with some much-needed sleep there. But it feels like he's just indecisive. It feels like he's frozen somewhat. This is a lot of time to invest at this early stage. We're still only on move 5, as we see with the move counter on the top left hand of your screens, and he's looking away from the board. He's just mulling over. It's a stylistic choice. He knows he's got basically 2 options of setting up his pieces, especially when it comes to developing his light square bishop. And at some point, he just needs to choose. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what he's in the mood for. Ultimately, these minutes that he's spending will be much needed later on in the game.
Are we getting shades of that Caruana-Carlsen game where Fabiano spent way too much time in that game 4 of set 1? Of course, this position is a lot different than that game, but right now, Wesley could play a number of moves quite quickly. I just wouldn't advise getting into time trouble against Magnus Carlsen, especially when you're both in this territory where you're unfamiliar with the starting position here. I think that Wesley shouldn't be worried. He's done nothing wrong. He's spending a lot of time, and we've seen Wesley be shaky, even by his own words, even what Nordierbeck was saying, in time trouble. So for Magnus, he should be feeling good. He's looking confident sitting across from Wesley.
More than a 3-minute thing by Wesley, so at this early stage of the game, and the 2 choices that David was referring to, either moves the king pawn forward or decides to develop the bishop on the G2 square. He goes for the ladder, the Fiancatoing, and we see the bishops facing each other. What kind of middle games does this opening setup get into? Does this mean that White eventually wants to try to get more space in the center, perhaps pushing the e-pawn on one step, 2 steps forward if allowed?
Yeah, I think he would love that, Wesley, so if allowed, but he is slightly behind in development here because Black has already castled. White's next move pretty much is guaranteed to be getting the White King to safety, castling himself, and Magnus will therefore have a move, maybe even 2 moves, to challenge the White center. And here we go, he gets ready to do so. He first pushes this pawn so that he can next, I think, Robert, your move potentially, push the Black c-pawn and prevent White from stepping forward, gaining even more space. But no, Magnus staying very flexible here. Putting a knight on the rim, it doesn't look like a great square, but later it might hop back towards the center. He's just getting the pieces out. And this is the downside, the double-edged sword of being creative, freestyling in the opening for Wesley. So, yes, you've got a healthy position, a playing position, but it's cost you a lot of time. Probably it's going to cost you a lot more time because still so many options on every single move.
And Magnus being non-committal is actually a good approach at this stage because Black can choose which pawn to push. Either the c pawn to challenge the d4 pawn or his d pawn go up to d5 to challenge the c4 pawn. He has options here, and Knight a6 keep both of those options alive, as the Knight a6 actually helps in the event that you want to play c5 instead of recapturing with the pawn, you recapture with the knight, gaining control of that key e4 square. So White cannot push any more pawns in the center of the board at this stage. Black is ready to do that, so Wesley has to think, which direction is Magnus going to go down? Magnus has not made his intentions clear.
He hasn't, but it has to be around these central breaks that we're talking about. And it might not even be a choice. We might see both these pawns moving forward eventually with maximum tension in the center, visualizing opening ideas with the pawn moving forward, the queen side stepping to e7, the black rooks coming to the center of the board. You get c5, d5 in. And that feels like the ideal opening development that you want with Black. What about the White's pieces? Where do you want to place them in the structure?
And this is the issue. This is why Wesley's burning even more time on the clock right now. He would love to, for example, put his knight on c3. If he gets more time with White, he would love to put his rook across to e1 and throw another pawn into the middle. But the problem in this type of position, as is well known in these types of what we call Queen's Indian structures, where Black Fianchettos on the queen side, Black often just plonks a knight onto this e4 square and trades off. Black was slightly cramped due to White having a big pawn center here, so any trade of minor pieces tends to free up Black's position. Of course, this isn't the only approach. Black's knight doesn't have to jump in. Black could go for one of those pawn breaks we mentioned, but this is what forced Wesley to think twice before bringing his knight out. He was scared of a trade of knights opening up this dark square bishop, so instead he simply pushes the pawn forward. This is really timid play, really kind of non-committal play by either side. I think they're both waiting for Magnus to kind of strike out in the center, and he does. Now we will see what happens with these central pawns. Likely another one incoming soon.
Even more so than these pawn breaks in the center, I'm looking at the clock. Magnus has built a nearly 4-minute lead on time, and if you're Wesley here, he takes the center, so a little bit has been clarified. I'm wondering if you're keeping one eye on the clock to make sure that you don't get yourself into too much time trouble. Magnus has not recaptured yet. You think that when someone captures your piece, you just take back, but look at how many pieces he can capture back. He will not be taking back with the queen. That would be a blunder. We typically do not want to lead with the queen when so many pieces are on the board, but he can capture, say, with the pawn. That would be the most normal looking move, and he does just that, but he was thinking perhaps I take with the bishop to keep the diagonal open.
Yeah, he takes with the pawn, establishing a long-term presence there. Now, space is pretty much level, and the pawn structure slightly imbalanced. White has an extra pawn on the e-file, Black has an extra pawn on the c-file. Black controls the pawn breaks, and it's just about whether Magnus kind of takes a slower maneuvering approach right now, or whether he lashes out and puts another pawn in the center. Black can put a pawn on c5, challenge in the middle, and we'll see maximum tension. It depends on Magnus's mood. He's kind of mixing and matching the plans. This is one you mentioned earlier, Tanya, just bringing the black rooks to the center. It's very healthy for Magnus Carlsen right now. Still in the balance.
Another plan that comes to play after this trade of pawns in the center is the fight for the e4 square now. Magnus can line up on the e line, get that rook
good luck
going,
getting around
jump in with that knight to e4. Meanwhile, Wesley looking for counterplay on the c line, trying to target that c7 pawn. I am expecting the c7 pawn eventually to rise up 2 squares and once again challenge that d4 center that we've been talking about. But looking at the clock situation, it feels that though Wesley managed to get that 1b3 early surprise,
I must have just left.
This is the one who's happier with the opening outcome.
Magnus has easy moves to make, but I just want to note that when Black does eventually play c5, it gives White an option to take on c5, either leaving Black with an isolated pawn. So let's just show that, right? You can take on c5, and if Black takes the knight, hopping the knight to the center, you have this isolated queen pawn, and Wesley just won a game from the white side of this type of position against Nadirbek and Busatarov to eliminate the young Uzbek talent. And if you take the pawn on c5, you get what's called hanging pawn structure. And I think this is good for Magnus, considering the clock. But what happens in these hanging pawn structures is difficult to move either pawn, because if you push a pawn, you leave a square behind. And let's say you push the c pawn, and White just give me that d4 square. And I'm ignoring the fact that it's giving away a pawn right now. The main principle is those pawns are very difficult to push because it's such a big decision handing key squares away to your opponent.
Yeah, often there's kind of a really split camp here. Players either love those hanging pawns or they hate them. And I think Magnus, knowing him a bit, he quite likes these hanging pawn structures, but there's a lot of responsibility having these pawns here. They will come under heavy fire in the next few moves, so you need to be ready. And Wesley, again, non-committal with his moves. Rook to e1 looks really, really slow, I've got to admit. Maybe he'll lift the rook up and swing it across to either c2 or d2, but either way, Magnus, he's going for those hanging pawns. He's taking the responsibility on, and he's got extra time on the clock to do so. Looks like Wesley less familiar, less comfortable in these positions than his opponent.
Yes, after that first initial move and surprise, it feels that Wesley's play has been very solid. KG in this position, but when you don't take the fight to Magnus, Magnus will bring the fight to you. And that's what we're seeing happen in the center right now. He's put the rook on d8, lining up with White's queen, so feels that he's ready with the pieces. The rook from e8 will slide down to c8. I think the big question will come right now for Wesley. Is he going to be the one who takes on c5 with his d4 pawn? Or does he just simply keep the tension on the board as is? Because one thing that Magnus would not like to do here is capture the d4 pawn himself, allowing White's knight to jump to a key d4 square and then be really ideally placed to start targeting the isolated queen's pawn.
If I'm Wesley, I am capturing that pawn on c5, but he's now down under 6 minutes. The time difference is growing between them, but capturing on c5 and then moving that knight on c3 back to e2, take one step backwards just to take two forwards. You're going to leap into the position here, because when the knight reroutes to f4, just like in that game against Nadirbek yesterday, you are putting a lot of pressure on the black center. The bishop on b2 is a much happier piece. The white pieces are coordinated quite nicely. So for Wesley, I would be taking the pawn on c5. Also, be moving more quickly, and he does not take. He instead leaps his knight forward to b5. He's taking advantage of a square that Black can easily kick that knight out.
Yeah, he's gained a square, Wesley, so this white knight looks pretty strong, but he's also given up this square. Something you mentioned, you alluded to earlier, Tanya. Black's knight on e4 often is a very strong piece. Anchored by a pawn, nicely supported there. It blocks out this nice square bishop long term, and Magnus instantly seizes this opportunity. Suddenly he's opened his own bishop. With all the four bishops kind of staring off at each other along these diagonals, it's all about whose bishops are better and who holds the key to the center. Suddenly Black's bishop potentially the stronger of the pair here. And queen to e2, Shabazz slides down slightly. It's all about the clock time, so Magnus has literally double the amount of time. And yes, no obvious moves. Suddenly it's getting a bit sharper, but it's starting to like Black's position.
Move 15, Magnus twice the amount of time on his clock right now, and the one with more control over the center, especially with that last knight jump that we saw. It is undoubtedly pressure Wesley right now. He does make the move queen e2, but not easy to find follow-up plans right now. That queen does defend that bishop in e2, which was pinned just a move ago. You couldn't capture in c5, so perhaps Wesley looking for ways to simplify in the center, and we can't expect that pawn takes pawn trade coming up next after queen e2.
And one thing I really like about Wesley's knight jump is he's eyeing that a7 pawn. It looks completely irrelevant, but Black, since the beginning, has wanted to connect the rooks, put them on the D and C files. That rook on a8 is stuck protecting that pawn on a7. So perhaps a clever try from Wesley. I didn't understand it at first, but now that he's protecting his bishop on b2, D takes c5 does feel more annoying for Black. That bishop on the dark squares in front of the Black king is an important defender in the event of a potential attack, whereas that bishop on b2 is happy to trade off the board here. So I do think that Magnus has a big question for him.
And very often when you're playing, and every move doesn't have to be one where you make these big decisions, David, you ask yourself which pieces can you actually improve. The one piece, as you mentioned, the rook from a8 cannot move because a7 is heavy, but that knight on a6. It's done its job. It managed to get c5 in. Is it time to reroute it, try and find a way closer to the center?
Yeah, there's a few squares for this knight to jump to. If we look at all of the black pieces, as you say, Tanya, when there's no concrete action, when there's no kind of calculation, no attacks, no defense, no threats, why not improve your west place piece? And black has two of them, this rook doing nothing. Just to point out Robert's idea here, unfortunately this pawn will simply fall, you lose a pawn for free. So yeah, it looks like the remaining candidate to be improved is this knight. A few options, you can drop it back, try to trade off for white's knight, but somehow this feels a bit clumsy after a trade. You get stuck on this open, what's about to become an open file on the c file, stared down by the white rook, feels a bit counterintuitive, and the question is, do you go the other way? Do you jump forward with the black knight? The question now persists, what to do with it next? Do you drop back again towards the center? This looks like maybe the most harmonious move to me. And valuation bar doesn't react, that's very good. Putting pressure on white center, but it does take a bit of time. And maybe Magnus is just wondering what to do here. For example, if the dark squared bishops disappear, are these pawn strengths? Are they weaknesses? Can Wesley chip away at them? Not sure exactly how the game would continue. The queen could give a check, for example. Black king maybe forced back, and it looks relatively level to me, but maybe Magnus is looking for something even more ambitious. I think his default setting, though, should be a cool piece, because that would be very much more right now.
Well, I was going back, coach told me that a good way to try to find your next move is ask yourself 3 questions. It's the rule of 3 questions. What's your opponent's threat? If there's a threat immediately, you counter that, you defend against it, you play against it. If there's no threat on the board, ask yourself, what's your opponent's weakness? In this position, there are no big weaknesses right now. The play is still going on. And finally, you ask yourself, what is your worst place piece? So if none of the two apply in the beginning, you go for your worst place, you improve the position. And I think this rule has also been mentioned by Jakubano.
I still managed to hit Martin with all 3 of my reds.
To keep in mind, because some players think when I can't capture, I have to capture. That's not the case here. I can capture on d4, as we were talking about. It will only help white. Black will be sat look nice and some trades will happen, and it's good for the side against the IQP.
Hit the middle
Knight b4 looks like a very nice move, but perhaps Magnus doesn't like the resulting trades there, so a3 kicking that knight back to c6. So from Magnus, who's had a big time advantage, he's using his time wisely, but suddenly it's getting closer on the clock, and that's good news for Wesley So.
Really long think now, over 4 minutes from Magnus Carlsen. Tanya, earlier you mentioned your move on the board, nice one. You mentioned the pay. Look at the pay differential between first and second.
Whoa.
That was not part of the plan.
Knight a2. That is an intruder.
I've seen Yasser Seirawan in games like this where he's talked about funny knight moves, but that knight just
Actually, it's still that blue shell.
And in fact, the rook can slide over, and the knight cannot escape. The c3 square is covered by both the bishop on b2 and the knight on b5. But what Magnus is doing is saying, go for that knight, I'm going to go for yours in return. And after move a6, you take on a2, I take on b5. This is looking very interesting, but in a way that white can maybe steal a pawn here, but the queen could get in some trouble. So this is one of these situations where calculation over everything. James Candy, I see you. That's required because bishop a6 is the end of the line, and that white queen is in danger.
Is she trapped? That's the big question. If she takes a pawn right now, she gets kicked around, and I think she might be caught. I'm trying to just find the killer blow. She's only got one more safe square. How do you close the net around her? Do you keep chasing her around the board? Is she finally caught in the center?
What recognition from Magnus to see this from a distance. He didn't just stumble into a pawn sacrifice that hopefully works. That's why he was spending all that time there. That queen is trapped, and that's not a usual place for a queen to get trapped, right in the center of the board.
That's not a usual place for the black knight to land on the edge of the board in your opponent territory. Knight to a2, just completely out of the blue to play this move. It's one of those do not try this at home moves. If you play this, you need to calculate this line till the very end. And Magnus has gone for move a6, and Wesley now slows down. If he wasn't to capture that pawn on b5, let's say you take rook takes knight, because there is no other move. You have to capture that knight. White's knight's got no square to retreat. Black takes it back.
They're actually called.
I'm liking Black's pawn structure now. A pawn from the side has moved towards the center of the board.
That explains it. I was wondering if
Big advantage Magnus, especially if he's able to get one more move and push a pawn further down the board, establish a protected pass pawn, but okay, Wesley does find an alternative. He realizes that yes, the black knight is trapped, yes, the white knight is also trapped, but he can first trade off and make sure that these bishops stare down at each other. Maybe he intends to actually capture this knight with his queen indirectly within the next few moves. This one is really eating up with it.
But I have to say, that knight e2 idea is brilliant. Game review, it gives brilliant symbols when you make a move that's a sacrifice. It isn't initially a sacrifice, but the idea is so sublime. It's just such a crazy decision to give away your knight, but to get your points knight in return like this. You could tell it caught Wesley so off guard. So love that decision.
My goodness.
One of those
Somehow I
moves
made it
that
through that.
puzzles everybody, including myself. But then when you see the brilliance reveal, Magnus Carlsen coming up with creative ideas, and now he should take back this knight or take back the pawn on c5 in a couple moves. And I do like his pawn structure on the black side.
Yeah, maybe he has to be careful here, Magnus Carlsen. If he takes this knight first, I'm wondering whether white. Maybe you don't get time to throw in a sneaky attack on the bishop because the knight drops back and saves itself. But yeah, the pawn structure you mentioned, the brilliant pawn structure, would be this one for black. And if you can keep them alive, this is a really tremendous trio. So we're expecting this from Magnus Carlsen. Clock's leveling out or getting closer towards each other. What a game. This is really sprung to life just in the space of the last 3 moves.
Absolutely. Knight A2 is one of those moments where you get a peek into the minds of a genius. This entire idea and the follow-up, we were thinking about how you can improve the position of that knight at the edge of the board. Magnus just finds a way that I think no one saw coming, including Wesley. But Wesley, things are still level. He finds a way to keep the balance going, takes the pawn. Now the bishops will get traded off. And this is one of Wesley's quality as well. He could be taken very well by shock, by surprise with knight a2, but he just composes himself so quickly and finds the best way forward.
He's quite an objective player. You don't really see Wesley take unnecessary risks, so if he can trade up all the pieces and secure a position where he doesn't have big losing chances, he will go for that. And right now, he has grabbed that knight on a2, like David said, the queen takes it and plays b4. So it's kind of like hanging pawns, but there are 3 of them. But he is gaining access to the d4 square. If black pushes the pawn up to c4 right now, the knight will slide into this juicy d4 square. That bishop on b7, it's a passive piece. Black does have this well-established protected pass pawn on c4. That's the good news. But that bishop is not great. There are going to be some long-term chances for both sides. It's a very double-edged position.
Really strong move there from Wesley So, and it's not a pawn sacrifice we should mention. Pawn takes pawn. It looks like the white queen is in a bit of trouble here. The pawn in front of her is pinned, but simply a slide to the right, a check, and next move you regain the pawn. And actually this is a far inferior version for Magnus Carlsen here. For example, if he moves his king, suddenly pawn takes pawn, the white knight gets access, but you don't have that strong pawn, that pass pawn that Robert was mentioning. So I think Magnus has to pretty much install it now on the c4 square, has to part with that dark square control, but yeah, very much kind of dynamically balanced right now.
And this is a critical moment. We often talk about critical moments in chess, which are based on calculation long lines, but even traits, structural changes, these are moments that define the rest of the game. So Magnus has slowed down. He needs to take a decision. Does he go forward with the pawn? Does he keep the tension? The line that you were pointing out with that c-pawn moving forward, it not only gives Magnus in compensation for that d4 juicy outpost, the pass pawn as you mentioned, but also this a3 pawn. That's going to be a long-term weakness in Wesley's camp. Double up the rooks at the edge of the board, the A line, and you've got to tie down all of Wesley's sources defending that. But Magnus takes a thing. C4, are there any other ideas that he's considering right now apart from the c-pawn moving forward?
Magnus is down on time for the first time all game, so that's bad news if you're a Magnus Carlsen fan. Wesley maybe caught him by surprise. It was a clever try with this knight a2, getting your own knight trap, but this d4 square looking so available to the white knight. I agree with David completely that you should push this pawn to c4. You want to close more lanes. If you take on b4, you're saddled with 2 separate isolated pawns. That's unideal. But Magnus down under 2.5 minutes right now. He could get in danger because he may not have the time to calculate afterwards.
He reaches out and he's making a move. Did he take on b4? Yeah, that did look like a capture. We see that happen. Queen gives a check, a trade offered. Anytime Magnus Carlsen offers a queen trade, you've got to slow down, make up your mind. It's always a difficult decision.
Wow, this is really anti-positional what Magnus is doing. It's not what he wants to be doing, but he's trying to clarify the matter. As Tanya says, if it comes down to an endgame. He's back Black Knight in the center is so active. Black's rooks will be relatively active. Deficiencies in his pawn structure. Yes, Black's bishop is a very important piece in these ensuing endgames, but he's posing questions to Wesley. Does Wesley keep the queens on? He can avoid the queen trade, go recapture the b4 pawn with his own queen, but big decision ahead right now for Wesley. Endgame or no endgame? Tension, no tension.
And if the queens do stay on the board, that means that white will be left with this bad a3 pawn. Tanya had highlighted that before. It's a target for Black's pieces. So this was a smart play by Magnus. He wants to shut down Wesley So's winning chances. Queens off the board would have done the trick. But Wesley said, let's keep this game going. Now your pawn on b5 is right in front of the white queen. Can that be grabbed? Ooh, d4. So Magnus is still throwing shots at Wesley So.
That's a big shot. You said endgame or no endgame. Usually when you're playing Magnus, the default answer should be no endgame. Wesley keeps the tension going. Magnus sacrificing to open up that bishop on b7, making it a sniper. Magnus looks away.
I think it fell in the water
Are
that
there
time.
tactics in this position?
I think Magnus, in his mind, he's blundered. He's just thrown away a pawn for pretty much nothing. He's banking, I think he was at least relying on tension.
Was I fourth or was I
the
third?
f2 square. White's pawn there on f2 near the white king is a bit vulnerable. The black queen, X-ray vision, the black knight attacking it, but there's no tricks, there's no traps. He's simply given away a pawn, and watch out, your b5 pawn is hanging as well. The evaluation bar says he's fine, but Magnus, frustrated at himself, he, after regaining composure there, drops his knight back to d6.